Welcome, 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 welcome. We are so excited to have you here for another episode of Ministry on Mission. Hi, I am Dr. Tomesha Walker, and I'm extremely honored to be the co host of Ministry on Mission with Dr. Anita Mckaney. Together, we say welcome to you again this week. So, this week we are bringing to you another special guest. But before we begin with her amazing story and wonderful introduction, we just want to say we are talking this week about the ministry of marriage. Can you believe it? We have both been married for, can you guess how many years? Can you guess? It's been more than just a few, more than five, more than a decade. We each have been married for more than 2 decades. Can you believe it, Anita? Can you believe it?
I
My
totally can. I feel each and every one of those years. And I love it.
Amen. Well, I'm so excited that we get an opportunity to share with you about that journey. And as you know, Ministry on Mission, our focus is to help you to start your ministry and finish the mission, what God has called us to do. So, part of our ministry, part of our mission and journey is that we have with our spouses and with our families. Anita and I both have had the opportunity to not only marry, but to also have children. And so within that, I have had the opportunity to birth 4 children and then to have 4 by wedding present. And then Anita has had the opportunity to also have 2 sons as well. So, Anita, would you like to share just a little bit about your family and the ministry of marriage that God has called you to?
Sure, I'd be delighted to do that. I am a happily married woman of 22 years. It'll be 22 years in July. July 21st, 2021 is when we got married. 2001, not 21, because this is 23. So it's been a wonderful journey. It hasn't always been easy, but it's been phenomenal. I believe that the ministry of marriage starts before you get married. I believe that it's something that's ingrained in you. You know how people say, you're wife material. You look like you should be a wife. You act like I got that so much before I even got married. And I believe that ministry is already birthed in you before you actually say, I do. And so that was the way it was for me. And so I believe that the ministry of marriage is not to be taken lightly. I believe in premarital counseling. I believe in doing your research. I believe in finding out who it is you're about to marry and making sure that you are ready for it, because it is not something to be taken lightly, irreverently. It's something that we have to enter into purposefully. And without doing that, we kind of set ourselves for failure. I was reading some statistics earlier today that said that 35 to 50% of marriages have failed in the last year. 35 to 50%. I don't plan to be a statistic. I know Tomesha doesn't plan to be a statistic. We are in it for the long haul. So we are prayerfully doing the ministry of marriage as a wife. And so our guest today is going to be sharing more about that. Tomesha, tell us about your ministry of marriage.
Well, that is a whole story, right? It's a whole journey. So, having the opportunity to be married for 2 decades has brought me to a real place of and journey of realization when it comes to what it means to listen, to share, right? To understand what it means to really love yourself in order to be able to love someone else as God calls us to do. I really don't think that I knew a lot about that. And the wild part is for me, it's a continual journey, but I've learned so much more of that in the last few years than I realized I needed in the beginning. Just like you were speaking about counseling and things of such like that, I feel they are so important. When I first began the journey, in ministerial training, actually towards the end, when we were talking more about doing things like weddings and funerals, and we began to talk about the need for premarital counseling, and that it wasn't just about like little topics where you were maybe talking about which way you wanted the toilet paper roll put on or how you wanted the clothes folded, but really getting down to historical things that had happened in your family and how you deal with issues and things that you really needed to talk about. So those struggles and things that you've gone through in life but maybe weren't completely healed from. Discussions that you needed to have about things that really hurt you within life that you possibly were still working through, and therefore working towards healing, right? And supporting the one that you care about, the one that you wanted to look to as your spouse before even walking down the aisle. So I always encourage my friends who are thinking about stepping into this journey, moving towards the life of oneness with another person that God has brought you together with, and making sure that you are discussing those hard topics, the things that you're not quite sure about, because in a marriage, you have to be able to communicate and deal with even the hard issues, those things that are really difficult for you when it comes down to it, but making sure that you all are talking through all of those things, because then no matter what the challenge is, no matter what you're facing, right? Then it's something that you can face and then face together. So many people talk about in the wedding and quote the scripture that speaks towards the two becoming one. In order for you really to become one and to foster a relationship, it is building that friendship. And we practice that through our mission of sharing the word of God. How do we get to the point where we can even share being a disciple of Christ? Really creating that relationship, having that communication, that daily prayer. So for me, that's kind of been the journey that I've been on, is just really firming up the foundation with the Lord so that I can then use those same principles in my marriage. No, there's not perfection in everything, right? It's not perfect all the time. There's issues, there's struggles, but really using that and understanding that God, our amazing Father, helps us so much in all of our relationships to understand how to bring Him glory and how to function in a way that shows the goodness of who He is, the grace of who He is, and the love of who He is. So that's kind of been my marital journey, getting married in the church, meeting each other in the church, I should say, getting married, having our children, and then expanding our lives from there. So that's been a bit of my journey. Thanks for asking. So we're excited to have everyone here. And listen, this being our
So this is our third episode, and we are excited to be here. I think we lost Tomesha for a moment, so we're going to get her back in just a moment. But we have author Lisa Thibeaux with us here today. How are you doing today, author Lisa Thibeaux? I'm going to go ahead and have you come in. We are so happy that you are here today. She
Hello.
comes all the way from where?
Lafayette, Louisiana.
Lafayette, Louisiana. How's the weather there today?
Balmy. It's about 75 degrees, but we're expecting rain, so it's sticky, but warm.
Wow. Okay. Sounds like Louisiana in March, April, springtime weather. Wonderful.
Right.
So welcome to Ministry on Mission. We are so glad to have you with us today. So you wrote and co-authored with Dr. Tomesha and I a book called The Marriage Bed of Roses. Tell us about how that happened and how the book came to be in your own words.
Well, it's a pleasure being here today. I appreciate you guys asking me to be present today. We had an appointed meeting, is what I call it. in Don Seafood here in Lafayette. You guys were on a birthday trip, and we were in the same restaurant, and you were having your conversation, and my husband and I were having ours, and of course my ears kept going to your conversation, and we were discussing what you guys were talking about with each other. And I said, well, they're not from here, and they sounds like they want to know about the gumbo, but they can't really decide. And so I had decided, well, I'm just gonna pass by and not bother them. So because I know it would have turned into a long meeting, as it did,
As it did.
because my husband spoke to you and said happy birthday or whatever he heard to say, and that caused us to have a great interaction. Finding out that you were an author, you had books with you, all those things, and then of course the things we talked about turned into tears. And
Yes.
loving on each other, and just felt like we had never not known each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, it was a great meeting to me, because we talked about it for hours after we left you. So that's how we met. And then in our discussions afterwards, like on the phone and things like that, we started talking about things. And one day we were having a conversation about marriage, and I was telling you guys that people don't understand what marriage is about. They think it's all about the wedding day, the wedding dresses, who's going to be in the wedding, the food, the honeymoon. But what happens after the honeymoon? What happens when you turn over and look at him and say, who is this? Where did he come? I mean, because you have those moments. It's like, who is this? That's not the person I married. Because of course we get comfortable with each other then, and we kind of relax on how we addressed each other when we were dating or courting. So that's why the conversation went in that direction. And when I said that, it seems like it sparked more conversation between the three of us. So in the conversation later, then you decided, one of you said, oh, so our marriage, our topic is going to be for our book, Marriage. And I went, wow. I was okay. And because people really, like we said, we talked about it, people really concentrate on the wedding dress, the wedding day, and they don't concentrate on the things that they're going to have to go through. Childbirth, accidents, monies, how your monies are going to be spent. Are you going to have an account, and he's going to have an account, and y'all going to make an account for the monies together for the bills for the house? What? And if you don't discuss things like that, then you run into struggles you don't have to have, because you're prepared for them already. For old school people, I'll say I'm an old school person. I'm a granny raised child. So there wasn't supposed to be his account, her account, and our account. It was all put in one pot. You pay the bills, and then after what's left over, you talk about, decide what you're going to do with the money that's there, or how much.
Now, wait a minute. Are you trying to tell me that me and my husband's money is supposed to be together? Like, what is this in the Bible? What are you talking about? What are you talking? I can just imagine somebody right now, like, who is this lady? What's she talking about?
Two becoming one. It's our money. It's not his money and her money, and then the money we spend together. It's our money. Even if you have he and she funds, he should still have access to yours, and you should have access to his. So it's still our money, right? It's still our money. It just depends on how you place it and what each account serves, what the purpose of each account is.
Yeah, that's a novel idea. It really is. A lot of people greatly struggle with that. Is it required? No, but is it recommended? Yes. Why do we say that? Well, Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 through 12, two are better than one. If one falls, the other one can lift up his fellow, right? A threefold cord is not quickly broken. So does that include money? I think it does. I think it does. What if something were to happen to your spouse and you couldn't get his money? Or what if something were to happen to you and he couldn't get your money? You know what I mean? So there has to be some kind of mutual financial agreements some
Yes.
kind of way, so
Yes.
that you do have at least have access. That's
Yes.
pretty countercultural, Miss Lisa Thibeaux.
Yes, ma'am.
For a
But
lot of people.
women today don't feel like that. I mean, I'm learning that today's woman is just different. It's my money, and I'm going to do what I want to with my money. And if he has a problem with it, he can deal with it because it's still my money. Or he says, well, I had this before she came, before I married her, so she shouldn't have access except to the money that she's when we got married from that day forward.
Mm-hmm. Wow, wow. So what other interesting ideas did you put in this book that we don't want to give it all away, but we're finding out that some things are a little different, your ideas of marriage for some people.
Yeah, for sure. And the only other thing that I really came out was that you have to be a whole person as a single person, and it's two whole people that come together to make one whole person. It's not a half and a half like fractions. And math tells us it's not half a person here and a half a person there to come together to make one. It's
Wait a minute.
two whole people.
I need you to. I need you to say that. Wait. You doing that kind of fast. Now wait. Now, let the people catch up. Wait.
Okay. So math says 1/2 and 1/2 makes 1, right? 1/2 plus 1/2 equals 1. That's what math says. The Bible says you have to be a whole individual. One whole individual.
Mm.
So the female has to be a whole individual. The male has to be a whole individual too. And they get married and become one. But they have to be whole, meaning
Okay.
I don't have any issues.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean by whole.
Mm-hmm.
I dealt with my history of whatever abuse, neglect, that person I dated that abused me, those kinds of issues. The woman that hurt me, I got over her, resolved it. I'm a whole person. I think straight on women now. I think straight on men. I'm not harboring issues with that man that hurt me, and I'm bringing them over into this marriage. Because when you do that, you're upsetting the apple cart, and you're asking for a whole nother set of issues that you don't have to go through.
Oh, that's so good. That is so good. I feel like many people don't face those things.
No.
And then when they come to the marriage bed, it's like, oh, I didn't know.
Right.
Oh, I didn't realize. What did
Mm-hmm.
you say to me? What do you want me to do? What is all of this clashing?
Yes.
All of this clashing because they're not coming from a place of being whole.
Right.
I
Or
think that's
healed.
so relevant.
Or healed.
Mhm.
Because you have to be whole and healed.
Yeah.
That's the only way to move forward. We have to heal. And you can't heal or put a band-aid over it and expect to go to a new relationship and not have that issue rear its ugly head again. You have to get over it. And we know people keep saying, get over it, get over it. We want you to get over it, but you truly have to get over it. You truly have to deal with the pain, the hurt, the rejection, the doubt, the low self-esteem, all of those things in order to be a whole healed person to go to unite with another person. Otherwise, you run into mountains and walls that you're like, a deer in headlights. Is that what that looked like? A deer in headlights. And we don't want that to happen to you. And if you find yourself in that situation, then we need to go into prayer. We need to seek God to get release and resolve for that issue. And then let our spouses know, hey, I didn't heal from that. I'm sorry. I still have issues with that concern. And can you just be patient with me? Pray with me through it. We've got to resolve it in order for us to go forward.
Yeah.
So you have to deal with your past in order to have a future with your current spouse.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. I love your definition of quote unquote getting over it. Because I feel like some people say that really nonchalantly.
Right.
Like, it's not actually a thing. But
Hmm.
your definition was just beautiful of having to actually dig into it, to deal with it and take care of it.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
using it more or less, when you say get over it with that type of definition, it makes
Hmm.
me think of it as, instead of allowing it to be a stumbling block in your marriage, allowing it to be a stepping stone,
Yes.
creating it into a stepping stone in your marriage, and being a solid foundation
Hmm.
to build on. Because when we do go to deal with things, we do have to go to God. Like
Yes.
it, to really be fully healed, right, and whole, we have to
Yes.
go to God. So
Yes.
allowing that firm foundation to be built, like, I just think that's a beautiful definition of how to
Hmm.
deal with and to get over something in order to be able to function as one,
As
meaning
one.
other one, to be
Hmm.
joined together in marriage. I love that. I
Yes.
love that.
Yes.
Mhm.
And it's all about, again, God has to be the center.
Yeah.
He has to be the center of her life and his life. If he's not the center, one of you is going to get weighed down with the other person's issues, because the Bible does say that the saved one draws the one that's not.
Mm.
So when you're exhibiting the fruit of the spirit in your marriage, then that should make a unsaved person want to be saved. How you handle them, how you talk to them, how you treat
Mhm.
them when they treat you crazy, how you talk to them when they're talking to you crazy. So if we can't show the love of God to our spouses, we
Mm.
definitely cannot do it to strangers,
Mm.
because charity love begins at home.
Yes.
That's so
So
good. That is so good. You know, like you were saying, things are very different when it comes to marriage now. The average marrying age is about 27 years old,
of
when it
course.
used to be like 21, maybe 22, 23.
Mhm.
It's 27. Like we're almost 30 now when we're actually jumping the broom. We're actually making the
Mhm.
move to get married. And some people are marrying even older than that.
Yeah.
So, talk to us about what difference it may make as far as how mature you are when you marry. Because I think it may make a difference when you are in your 20s versus if you're in your 40s when you marry, or even later and beyond that. Do you think that people who marry later in life have a better chance of their marriage like staying together because they're more mature? Or do you think that perhaps it's just dependent on people's life circumstances that will foretell the longevity of their marriage?
I think age helps, because the older you get, if you mature properly, you know what you want better. You know what you will put up with and take from someone else better. You actually know yourself better. And if you had a if you started your relationship with Christ early in life as a teenager or in your early 20s, by the time you're 27, 30, you have a stable relationship with Christ. You know where to go, who to go to in any circumstance, whatever's going on, so you can work it out, because God is the source. So I was 54 when I married my current husband. I'm going to say I had a marriage before, because I had to, my biological clock was ticking, and my head said, you're over 30, you need to get married. So I put something together that wasn't in God's timing and wasn't God's way. So it was very ugly. So I would suggest, if you're rushing into marriage because everybody else is getting married, or because you want to have a baby and have children by a certain age and they're grown and gone by the time you're 50, so you can still have a life to live, that kind of thing. No, it's God's timing. God's timing is better than anything, because he knows how to work on you to prepare you for your spouse,
Mm,
the one he has for you. So if you're concentrating on what he has for you and doing what he has called you to do until that time, then the things you go through and the patience he's teaching you, or the listening skills he's giving you, he's preparing you for the person you're going to be married to. So the longevity will come because you know each other. It's like my husband and I, when we met, it felt like I didn't ever not know him. He was a male version of me to me.
Oh,
So just in that, my brain said, if you had just waited, if you had been patient and waited on God, imagine the years you could have had with that person, with him. We could not have been married early because we were both headstrong. We were both concentrating on ourselves. It's my way or the highway. And we both said that. So had we met in our 20s or even in our 30s, it would not have worked because I was all that in a bag of chips. He was all that in a
period.
bag of chips. Yeah, that was it. If I couldn't be the it, then you keep on going down the road. He felt the same way. So early on in life, had we met, it would not have worked. We would have bumped heads. So I think maturity, at whatever age, even if young people are more mature than some of the older people I know sometimes.
So
So it's
true.
not about a number. It's about stable in your head. It's about mental capacity. It's about where you are in your life. Are you on stable ground? Have you been making good decisions, God decisions? That's what makes maturity to me. So once you mature God wise, and then you know what God wants for you because you're on track with him, y'all are aligned, then the marriages work better, I think.
Mm.
And we
Okay, now
know that
y'all.
it's till death do us part. So it's
Yeah.
no, those other words, separation, divorce, that's not an option. We already know that.
Yeah, so
So
good. So
uh,
good.
now, this has been a lot of really good nuggets. Like every time you done said something, I'm like, oh, I thought I knew what she she teaching me even more. Like it's just beautiful. So I have to mention, we had the amazing opportunity, as we said, to come together and to share a book called The Marriage Bed of Roses. And so I love the fact of even the tips that you gave. And I already know that there's a way more in the book, but I'm excited and I want to make sure to mention that you all can get a copy of the book as well as hear more of the tips and the amazing shares of knowledge that are in the Marriage Bed of Roses. So take a look right now at this wonderful trailer where we've had an opportunity to share with people, to go ahead and have books signed. We are just excited to be able to bring to you the Marriage Bed of Roses, sharing with you the journey of over 50 years of combined marital experience and a journey that God has brought us through to be able to share with you. Take a look. So we're so excited that you guys got a chance to see that. Make sure you go and grab your copy on Amazon. You can get it today. Or if you see us in person, as we told you, we shared it nationally. So you can grab it if you're in the South. You can grab it if you're in the North. You can send a message to us, especially if you would like a signed copy.
Yes.
We will get that mailed right out to you. So again, it's the Marriage Bed of Roses from the three of us. Yes, yes, yes. From the three of us. And go ahead, Mama Thibeaux. Why don't you say the title and the hashtag?
It's the Marriage Bed of Roses, Pricks, Passions, and Perfumes. And the hashtag is the Marriage Bed of Roses.
Yes, yes, yes. So make sure you guys get your autographed copy from us. And we are just elated that God has allowed us to live these journeys to grow within these journeys and to share these journeys and this marriage ministry that each of our lives have had an opportunity to walk through. So, with all that you have been sharing, I will say, guys, make sure that you let us know, right? Because we have the after show coming up. Make sure you all let us know what questions you additionally have, because I know in all that she has been sharing, it has been sparking some interest in me on more information and on more questions and more things that I can pick her brain about that she is able to share with me. So we want to make sure and invite you guys to be able to do that as we get back into our discussion. So, something that you said was very interesting to me, and I wanted to share a note about what I had heard that marriage could be. Now, I heard this years into my marriage, probably 13, 15 years into my marriage, where it was shared that marriage can be like sandpaper, where you have an opportunity, where oftentimes we'll hear iron sharpens iron, right? And I was like, okay, I get that concept. But then I heard as someone was discussing about marriage that it could be like sandpaper. And I was like, why do we need sandpaper, right? What is sandpaper for? And it's to smooth down those rough edges. So those areas, like you were talking about how now in the 20s, I don't know if it'd have been a good idea. In them 30s, woo, don't know if that's what we should have done, right? But now, in the place that God brought us to, we're able, right? We've gone through some different things that have allowed us to meld together a bit better. How can you speak towards that, and how in this new season where God is bringing you all together, it has helped you to be able to work through some different things to allow you to truly walk out the ministry of marriage and the mission of sharing more about who Jesus is?
In ministry, we have to exercise patience and long suffering with neophytes, babies in Christ. In marriage, you have to exercise those gifts even more, because, like you say, they smooth out. With sandpaper makes the rough stuff smooth. So when you're going through a rough patch, if you allow God to work in both of you, because we have a tendency to say it's his fault, I didn't do nothing, he's the one that got the problem, not me, or he says she's the one with the problem, not him. And in actuality, it's God working out something in both of you. So the roughness has to be dealt with, and it's how you handle it that causes it to be resolved and smoothed out, or it to get bigger. So at some point, one of you, and my grandmother used to say this all the time, somebody has to listen and somebody talks. The other person listens while you talk. You both can't talk at the same time. So with that being said, when you reach a struggle, a valley, a place where you disagree, if you get hot-headed, table it. Just say, can we just agree to disagree right now until we cool off and can better discuss it? If you're not hot-headed and you can talk about it, talk about it. If you need to take a break from it to think about it, do that. But bring it back to the table so that it can be resolved. Otherwise, it keeps coming up. It's going to keep coming up until you pass the test. It's like your testimonies. You got to take the test in order to have a testimony. Same thing in marriage. Until you pass the test about getting along and discussing something calmly, resolving it, you got to keep going around that mountain until you pass the test. So just realize that there are going to be valleys, there are going to be highs. The highs aren't always going to last. You got to go through the valley. So let's know that in marriage, you're going to have difficulties. It's how you deal with them so you can get on to the happy part. It's what makes the journey good.
And there really is a happy part, right?
Oh, yes, most
People
definitely.
often are talking about the hard parts of marriage, the difficult parts of marriage, the things that are so, marriage is hard, but you rarely hear people saying marriage is awesome. Marriage
Yeah.
is great. I'm having lots of sex. I think marriage is wonderful. I love my husband. I love my wife. Like, you don't hear that as
Mhm.
often as you would imagine among so-called Christian couples,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Oftentimes we get the negative connotation of marriage and we don't hear people excited and
Mhm.
looking forward and celebrating anniversaries and encouraging other couples. Like, usually it's more about comparing one marriage to another, or there's people that are constantly berating their husbands to you, berating their wives and slandering each other. And it can
Mhm.
be pretty intense, right?
Right.
Because the two big things that destroy marriages are, number one, what you said, that communication factor, and money, the first thing you
Mhm.
talked about.
Yep.
So if we can get those two things together, that's helpful. But I would say that the bare minimum, the foundation of marriage, if God isn't in it, it really is a hopeless situation from the beginning.
Mhm.
You can try your best. You can put your best foot forward. You can do all the right things. You can literally have a perfect picture in your mind of what you should do, what he should do, and do all of those things. But if God isn't the foundation, you really still are building on sinking sand. And that doesn't work in marriage. It never really works. Why? Because marriage was made to glorify God. So if it's made to glorify God, it's got to be built correctly.
Mhm.
So talk to us about when it's not built correctly. What about if my spouse is unmarried or they don't really have the same beliefs as me? What if I marry somebody that's a different religion? What if, we're a blended family and, other people are in his ear about what marriage should be? And like, it's been hard for a long time, like just being real, right? With a lot of these
Mhm.
marriages. You mentioned in the book about building the marriage instead of just preparing for a wedding. Talk to us about that.
We have to be ready to deal with day-to-day things. Like you said, what happens if your husband's not grounded in the word, or he's not a church goer, or things like that? Again, if you are saved, then you definitely have to pray for him and exhibit the love of Christ in whatever area he's lacking or she's lacking, depending on who's where. Um, again, God has to be the center of both of your lives. If that's not the case, again, like you said, sinking sand. But anything can be gotten through if it's what you want for yourself. My word before, another interview we did was stick to itiveness. That's my made up word, but I would say your commitment to the marriage, your commitment to the other person. I think a lot of times that's what's missing is I'm not committed for the long haul. I'm only committed when it's going good. I'm only committed when he's doing what I want him or her to do. I'm only committed when things are smooth. There's no rocky road. When it gets rocky, then I'm not committed. You have to be committed. The vows in your wedding vows, do we really actually listen to what they say? Do we really believe
Oh my goodness.
those vows?
What are wedding vows? What?
The
What?
ones that you repeat, the preacher tells you to say till death do you part,
It's been 22
in
years. Let me see if I
sickness,
can.
you know, those vows, they
Vows.
mean something.
Wow. So you mean I actually like should do what I said?
Yeah. Your word is your bond.
Hmm.
And
Is
then you
it?
said that word in front of a bunch of witnesses if you got a
Okay.
church wedding or a big wedding, and in front of God.
Well, people are changing their vows nowadays. There's
I,
like, I love you, you love me, let's do this.
yeah.
You may kiss your bride. Like, that's it.
I know.
Things are
That's
so different now.
different, very different. That's why we have to teach our children the Bible. We have to make sure they know about God, about Christ, and what Christ did for us. And we have to know the word so we can apply it, so they can see it. Because if they don't see love in action, then as soon as you're not doing what I think you should be doing, goodbye. I pick up the next one and see what happens with that one. See how far it goes. No, that's not the way it was meant to be. And I'm gonna tackle this one too, because it's a sticky subject. But in my later life, I now understand why one woman with one man till death do you part. No premarital sex. No, I understand that even better, because if we would be celibates before we got married, until we got married, then we would have no comparing your current person with that person back yonder, or what you're not doing for me that he or she did. What we wouldn't miss anything. I understand that concept now. Premarital
That's
sex.
so good. I gotta wait. Let me tell you something about that right there. Okay. So I truly believe what you were saying concerning that, right? So I was having a discussion at one point, and the discussion was racing around the fact that, oh, their history was this, and so they were trying to like figure out how to stay focused, in the relationship where they were, and not doing that whole comparison thing, and also not causing so much personal self-doubt.
Yes.
Right. And I was like, I can listen and I can kind of, like handhold and walk you through, but being able to speak from the place of, and knowing others who speak from the place of, well, I don't really know about that. Like I've only really had one partner. Like I agree with you, because originally that was never my thought of, oh, how much it weighs on your spouse or your partner when there is a comparison game happening, and how much it weighs on yourself when there is a comparison game happening. I hadn't thought about that before. I do remember one person that taught us at a young age about relationships, and they talked about how being with someone intimately is like when you stick two halves of duct tape together, and you rub it together really well, and then you try to pull it apart. Each side still has pieces of that other side of the duct tape attached to it.
Yes.
And I had thought of it in that respect, but then after that, I just hadn't gone with the psychological, repercussions of what could really happen when you started to do that, and you then tried to bring and wrap your mind around how you felt in that relationship after having been with someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's so amazing that you bring that up and that you're able to share that wisdom with us. So thank you.
No problem, because it was a major factor for me, because I'm like, well, this person doesn't do what that person did, but so do you discuss that with the current person? No, because they have issues with the past or somebody else doing something different. So you have to go through a healing process to get delivered from those thoughts, because it stays in your head. And this is the place for war, in your thoughts. So a healing process with God, talking to God about it. Lord, renew my mind so that you don't have that mindset. So again, that's opening up another can of worms. But I understand that concept. Like I understand it so much better now. So I just felt led to say that. So I needed to put it out there.
I think that's a good can of worms to open, though.
So yeah, I mean, because somebody will need to hear it somewhere else down the line, or something will need to be said. But Your example of the duct tape, we used, my class used just glued pieces of paper. You can't unglue what's glued. So you take pieces of those people with you into the next relationship, And then you wonder why you respond a certain way or act because you've taken on the spirit from that person that you got with. And you take that with you into the next relationship. So you have to, again, that's a part of that being whole and healed process. So, that just was a big one at one point for me, but it has to be dealt with. I mean, it's just like, it would be like someone being raped, and then thinking that they can go into the marriage, but you haven't dealt with the rape. You haven't dealt with how you felt when you were raped. Now, I couldn't speak to that, but it's a process of being healed. You got to go through the process of being healed in order to go into a relationship with, as a married person, with that another person. So if you don't express that or that concern to the person you're marrying, or let them know that you had that experience, then what happens if you all of a sudden are in the process of doing something or anything, and all of a sudden that whole experience explodes? Then what? You've opened up a can of worms for real, because that person didn't even know anything about that have ever happened to you. So then you gotta go to counseling. They gotta go to counseling if they decide to stay with you, whatever. Again, those are things that have to be discussed. Things that, when you're getting ready to get married, there's things that you need to let the other person know about.
Yes, we
They
have
have
That's
to
to.
know.
beautiful advice.
Yes,
They have
yes.
to know.
Like,
You have to let them know the whole you, so that they can decide if,
Mhm.
yes, I'm willing to go through this with you, even with what you're bringing. I'm willing. But if they're uninformed, then they couldn't make a good decision because they didn't have the information.
Mm,
So
I
they
that's
think
need to
it's
really
be
such a
good.
informed.
good topic for us to like wind down on. Um, the need to heal, mentally, emotionally,
Mhm.
physically, moving into the marriage, and then sharing your whole person, like who you really are. Because I feel like so many people, as they share, like they're doing dating apps or they're doing this or that, they're only showing a portion of
Right.
themselves. They're only giving just a little bit of themselves. And can you just speak to how important it is for us to show our whole selves, as we are to show our whole selves, to the Lord? Like, why is that so important? Why would that be so important?
Actually, the Lord knows you
Mm-hmm.
in whole. You just
Mm-hmm.
think you're hiding part of you from him. He just needs for you to know that you recognize that he knows you. So I'm just going to confess it to you anyway, Lord. I know you know, but I need to tell you about me, and I need you to help me, because you're the only one that can fix me. You created me. I made these mistakes. Now I need to be put back together, and only you can put me back together. So, dear Lord, can you please, please, please
Mhm.
put me back together the way you want me put back together?
Yeah.
Help me get rid of the stuff you don't want me to have. Take it away.
Mhm.
Help me get rid of it. It's him we have to depend on, because he's the one that's in control, not us. We want everybody to change. We want everybody to be different, when half the time, or the majority of the time, it's you that needs to change. And the change can only happen when we repent and go back to God and let him know, God, I'm nothing without you. Nothing. It's only by your grace and your mercy that I am who I am, period. And be grateful for who you are. Because even though we make the choice to go through some things, it makes us better when God is in it.
Mm.
When we allow him to put us back together, heal us, the potter's wheel, that clay where he beats it, smashes it down, and starts going around and forming again. That's a process from the day we're born to the day we die. He's steady making us better. If we got to allow him, though. He's not going to force us to get better, but he's nagging on you. He's nagging at you. Lisa, I need to work in that area. Can you open the door and let me in? Knock, knock. Lisa, I need to work in this area. Will you allow me to work in this area? Yes, Lord. Hands up. Whatever you need to do it. Whatever you need to do it, Lord. I give you permission. You have my permission to work because you are Lord of my life. Here I am. Whatever, Lord. And that is for everything. Whatever you want me to say, I'm going to say it. Whatever you want me to do, I will do it, because no whipping is worse than any whipping that he can give you. He's the best person to do a whipping. And once you've had one whipping from him, you don't have to be whipped anymore. It's like, okay, God, just do it. Have your way. Have your way. So get out of his way. Let him know that you're ready and willing for him to be involved, for him to be the boss, because we're not the boss, even though we think we are.
So we will answer additional questions online. We'll answer additional questions on our follow-up show. Anita, is there anything that you would like to share as we wrap up, or ask as we get ready to round up for this show?
You know, my favorite part of today's interview is when Lisa Thibeaux said that it really is about commitment. No matter where your marriage is right now today, it's a ministry and you have a mission. So don't give up. That's it. You're committed. If you're committed, you're committed, right? So that means I'm committed when it's good. I'm committed when it's bad. I'm committed when it's somewhere in between. I'm committed when I don't feel like it. I'm committed because I'm committed. I'm committed first to God because he's the foundation. And then I'm committed to my marriage because he created it. He established it. He built it. And so if he built it, he can uphold it. And so if I'm committed to him, the one who can restore and correct and redeem and hold it together, then really I'm on good foundation. And that is the best, my favorite takeaway from what you have said today. Thank you so very, very much for sharing with our audience today, for being live with us here at Ministry on Mission, where we encourage and equip women to start their ministry and finish their mission. Today's mission, should you choose to accept it, is your marriage.
Yes.
So let's do that, right? Let's be those committed women. Thank you, Lisa Thibeaux. We are appreciative of you today. And listen, we will see you all next Friday. We are excited about our next guest. Don't miss it. Make an alarm. Tell your friends. Share it out. Follow us on social media, #Ministry on Mission. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.